Hello and welcome to our messy Open the Book. We're very excited this week, so we're going to start some new stories for you. These stories are all about children in the Bible, how children take different parts in the different stories. And today we're going to read a story about a very important person. I wonder if you met somebody like the Queen or the Prime Minister, would you be nervous about speaking to them? Our very important person in the story today is called Naaman. He was the commander of a whole army. But this story is also about a little serving girl. Now, she wasn't important at all. In fact, she was so unimportant that we aren't even told what her name is. But she did play a very important part in our story. So today's story is called The Helpful Servant. And in a moment, Anne's going to do a craft with you, and then we're going to hear that story, and then we're going to sing our song together. And at the end, we'll all say our prayer. So sit back and enjoy.
Today we're going to make a small treasure box. In our story that you will hear in a while, we will hear about somebody who swapped a lot of treasure for something very small and special, which I like to think he would have kept in a little box just to remind him of what had happened to him. And so we're going to make a box today. What we need is a piece of paper, or if you can find some card. This is slightly thicker than paper, it's card, but paper will work just as well. We need a ruler, a pencil, some glue, and some scissors. And we're going to make a box. Now, first of all, take the piece of paper, it's an A4 size, and we need to mark 4 centimetres from the side. So there's 4 centimetres there, and I've done one here as well, 4 centimetres. Now, at this point, if you can be rather careful in your measuring, it will make your box a lot tidier. And so we draw a line down there, and I've already marked this side up. We have 4 centimetres here. Do the same again, and then we want to do the same from the bottom, so 4 centimetres there and 4 centimetres here. Draw a line across there, and the same again at the top. There we are. So it's a bit of measuring. I've got a nice metal ruler here, it's very stiff, so it's very good for actually measuring, and in a minute it's going to come in really handy because we're going to fold along these lines we've made. As I say, we want to fold along all those lines, so we want to fold the paper up, and if you have a good ruler you can fold against it and then press down. I use the pencil to make good firm folds. Okay, turn around to do the same again. There we are, line up the ruler and again fold against it and then fold it over. I'm going to do that with the long sides as well. Line up the ruler. As I say, a bit of care at this point will make your box that much neater. I'm rushing it, but you can take a lot more care. And then finally the other side. Again, if you're using paper it's a bit flimsier, but actually making the folds is a lot easier. Yeah, and then fold over, run the pencil. And so we have our corners like that. Now what you need to do is take one flap and you fold it up to the fold you've already made. So you've got a flap over here, okay? And again, just make a nice firm fold. And then open it up and do exactly the same on the other side. So you can probably see that it's coming together. Nice firm fold. And now we have to cut. And so if you have the long side facing you, you want to cut to that line, that first line, And so we just cut to that line. Cut along these folds that you made. And as I say, little care here. There we are. So end up with 3 flaps. One there, one there, one there, and one there. And do the same on the other side. And so it will look a bit like this. Now, if you want to decorate it, this is the time to do it. And you need to decide which is going to be your base. So if you put it down, this is going to be your lid. So if you'd like to decorate the lid, you can decorate that. You can decorate these as sides. Don't really want to decorate the bottom, but you can do that. Once you've decorated it, you need your glue. So fold your sides in, these little flaps at the bottom, and glue them. Yeah. Depending on your glue, depends on how long you have to stand there like that. And turn around and do the lid. Oops, I did it the wrong way. Sorry. That side. Fold them in. See, rushing too much. Fold them in and then stick them there. Open that one up. My glue will dry, it'll be alright. Okay. There we are. And finally these two. Fold them in. Don't forget to fold them in. Fold them in like that. And then they fix to the side there. Just inside, okay? So you end up with your box. Fold it down. There we are. You end up with your box. And you can decorate it in good style. Here is one I made earlier. There we are. I've labelled it my treasure box. Open that way. This one's made of paper, so it's a bit more flimsy, but as I say, there we are. And so you're going to hear the story and see what is special that maybe our character kept in his special box.
So let me tell you the story about the helpful servant. Naaman was a soldier, not just any soldier, but the commander of the whole Syrian army. He was a very powerful man, but he was afraid. Naaman, you see, was ill, and nobody knew how to make him well. His skin was covered with sores, and he couldn't feel his fingers or his feet, and everyone felt sorry for him, and God felt sorry too. So God whispered to a little girl who had been captured by Naaman's army and carried away from God's promised land. She worked for Naaman's wife, and one day she said to her mistress, "Back in Israel, where I come from, there lives a man called Elisha. God uses him to make sick people well. If only Naaman could go and see him." And before long, the great soldier who had fought against God's people was off to seek help from God's prophet. But Naaman didn't go alone. He took his servants and his horses and a chariot full of treasure to reward Elisha in case his cure should work. It was a grand parade, and Naaman expected a grand greeting in return. But when he sent one of his men to knock on Elisha's door, the prophet did not even answer. Instead, he told his servant Gehazi to say, "If you want to be well, go and dip yourself 7 times in the Jordan River." Now, it may be that Naaman was tired and frustrated, or it may be simply that he was proud. Whatever the reason, the prophet's message made him angry. "The River Jordan," he shouted, "it's filthy. I'll throw myself into any river back in Syria, but I will not stick one toe in the Jordan or take advice from a man who can't even be bothered to meet me." "Begging your pardon, sir," mumbled one of Naaman's servants, "but if the prophet had sent you off to do something hard, you would have gone straight away, wouldn't you?" "Of course," grunted Naaman. "Any soldier would." "Well then, why can't you go and do something easy, like washing in the river? It can't hurt and it might just work." Naaman sighed. "Oh, all right," and led his men to the river. He dipped himself twice. Nothing. He dunked himself twice more. His skin was as ugly as ever. Twice more and still no cure. Naaman was getting angry again, but when he came up for the 7th time, spluttering and shaking the water from his face, Naaman's men let out a cheer. Naaman opened his eyes and looked at his hands. The sores had gone from all over his body. So Naaman dressed and hurried back to Elisha's house. The prophet himself answered the door this time, and Naaman could not contain his joy. "Take the treasure," he said. "Take it all," Naaman begged, "for you have saved my life." But Elisha said no, for it was God, after all, who had healed Naaman. "All right then," said Naaman, scooping up a pile of earth, "let me take this with me, so that I can stand on a piece of your land and worship your God too." Elisha nodded and smiled. And God smiled too, for with a little girl and a muddy river, he had turned an enemy into a friend. So who do you think the most important person in the story was? Maybe it was Naaman or even Elisha. But without the servant girl going to Naaman's wife and telling her what God had said to her, then Naaman would never have known about Elisha, and he would certainly never have heard about Elisha's God. So that young servant girl, who was probably not much older than you, was really very, very important. And we're all important. We don't have to be powerful. We don't have to be in charge of a country or an army. God can work through all of us, however small we might feel.
Our song today is When I Needed a Neighbour, and we do have 6 verses, so I do have some words to help us along. The first verse is, "When I needed a neighbour, were you there, were you there? When I needed a neighbour, were you there?" And the chorus is, "And the creed and the colour and the name won't matter, were you there?" Here we go. Hungry and thirsty.
come to our time of prayer. And I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and think about the people who have helped you, maybe when you're unwell. It might be the doctors and nurses, but it might be your family or your friends. Maybe you want to just say a silent thank you to them now in this moment of quiet. So now I'm going to say a prayer, and if you want to make the prayer yours, then please say at the end a nice big Amen. Dear God, thank you for using a little girl to help Naaman get better. Please be with anyone we know who is ill today and help them get better too. Amen. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.